Wasn't
This
aware.
conference will now be recorded.
There are all kinds of meetings that you aren't aware of.
Oh, for you guys. Okay.
Yeah. We have tech meetings every week, and then we have crossover meetings between sales and tech, sometimes at the tail end of those every week. And we have quarterlies that we actually fly to Texas for and have a big meeting with a guru that helps us with our entrepreneurial operating system that we're following. So there's a lot going on in the background. Anyway, how are you?
What's
I'm
going
alive.
on, everybody?
I think Chris should Myers should run the show this time. Loco did one a couple weeks back. I've done 217. He just
I've
cut
done
out
a,
on purpose. Look at that.
and I've done a, and actually I've done more than Chris has because I've done a handful myself because
Yeah,
you guys were all MIA in different
yeah.
events and stuff.
You're the reason for our disclaimer, Jim.
Well, that's the after show disclaimer. That's not the first. Hey, the ones I actually did that were legitimately this part. I behaved myself very well. I had the mute button on myself.
There he is. Our MC is back. Thought you ducked out on
All
us.
right. Let's see if
Well,
that solves it.
having some technical issues.
Woo! Man.
This is annoying.
Well, if
So we have
anybody's,
a few
yeah,
new people, right? And I'm Chris, Thunder Laser. We got BB, Mr. Bell, and the infamous yet blurry Chris Myers.
Sorry, I don't have a keyboard on my laptop right now.
What happened? All right.
I don't know. Well, I tried joining this thing earlier and I couldn't get audio, even though the camera preview and the audio worked. Every time I joined up, it was nothing. So I rebooted, and now I have no keyboard on my computer, which is a
So I
laptop.
see. Is Brenda? Brenda's been here before, hasn't she? Maybe so. If any of you want to talk, ask questions, I'm sure we'll have a few people in here that want to ask some questions about the Bolt. Feel free. Make sure you're unmuted. Oh no, that's not good.
Well, that's awkward silence in the beginning. That's a weird.
Yeah.
well, Chris is drinking on the job. I can use this moment to say hey to Danny real quick. How you doing, man?
So one
Anybody?
quick thing that I wanted to cover with my two boys here is that on the Bolt, when before you go through your startup sequence and you confirm on the screen, because now on the screen you have to confirm that you want to home the machine. So it checks the end stops, goes to 00, and comes back to wherever your origin is. It will not turn on that contactor until it finishes that homing process. The contactor is triggered by the fan and the LPSU board. So just FYI to my guys.
What?
Yep. The contactor will not activate the 48 volt power supply or the 36 volt power supply until that homing process is done, and that little board, I guess, is letting the ionization happen. So until that happens, you've got nothing on 48, you got nothing on 36.
Yeah, but it can't home without the 36 volts.
Or sorry, the 24. No, the 36 volt. Yeah.
Brian, you're muted.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I think the 24 power supply goes to the one rail that's not through the contactor, and then the other two do, if what I saw was right in the diagram.
All I know is that contactor does not get triggered until it finishes its homing process, and 48 volts is then applied. Just so you know.
Are y'all discontinuing the light burn keys with the lasers, or is that just for the bolt?
We see a lot of people buying the bolt that already have a key. So we are going to offer a discount to those that don't have a key.
Okay.
And mostly because our margins on this are not very high. This is an entry-level machine, badass machine, but bare bones as far as what we can give with it. I think it's going to be $60 for the, if you don't have a light burn key, from what I understand, $60 will get you light burn. It'll be an additional cost. Lots of awkward silence.
So the one thing that we had to talk about, other than asking that question, was we were trying some cylinder correction on the fiber today, and even though it said we should have been able to do this width, we didn't quite get all the way on the edges of a JDS leatherette dice cup. So it was a good practice. Now we know that we need to keep our images to like 50 millimeters instead of whatever that one is, 70, 80.
And I do have a thing I can put in here with settings. And I always know how people always ask for, what are your settings? What are your settings on Facebook and all this other crap? Well, I've done a lot of glass, for some odd reason, and I was trying to perfect it. And I had talked to Travis, showed him my pictures of what I was trying to get with my settings and see if I could perfect it. And he said he thought I could get it better. He gave me his settings and what he does. It was one thing, and I have two different methods for glass that I do depending on what I'm doing with the glass. And then I talked to Loco about his settings for glass, and my settings for my setup was better than what Loco's or Travis's was for my particular applications. And even Loco, when I showed him my picture, he said that's as good as you're going to get.
Mm.
And I went back to my original settings of what I normally do. That just goes to show each individual machine and each individual person with their setup and each individual thing that they're doing, it's not going to translate to everybody else's settings that you're trying to get.
And glass is weird. I mean, there's so much that goes into that glass.
So
That's why
every production run could be different.
it's just basically trying to say, for those people out there, if anybody actually listens and pays attention to this, instead of trying to do it the easy way, doing it the hard way, and learn your settings and learn your own machine. I gotta trying to watch my mouth, and trying to choice of words here, and just learn what your machine does and test. I mean, I had two glasses that I trashed because I was testing so much, trying to perfect something that I thought I could get better of, and there was no getting it any better. But I did, my own stuff first, and then I reached out and asked a couple people to what they were doing, and it wasn't no better than what I was already doing for my particular laser, my particular setup, and the way I do things.
Where is Vanessa? Vanessa, do you have any questions? I think you're new as well.
I don't at this time. My connection is kind of bad, so I'm just listening in for now.
Okay.
Bill raised his hand.
Bill.
Yeah, I've got a question. I've got a Nova 51 130, and I'm trying to do some engrave with tiles, basically put paint on them and put some images on them. I noticed in light burn, I'm trying to do maybe a 22-degree angle, and put the speed at 1,000. What's the maximum speed that these things can get? I don't know if I'm wasting my time trying to go that high.
At
You
at
are
22
way.
So go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's all right. 22 degrees on your half tone or 22 degrees on your scan
On,
angle?
on the scanning on the angle.
Yeah, it's not designed to go that way.
Okay.
You're not going to get 1,000 millimeters per second that way, and I don't recommend 1,000 millimeters per second. That's as fast as you're going to go, but you're trying to lay, for photos, you're trying to lay perfect little dots. The faster you go, the more those dots get spread apart and you lose detail.
Well, I think right now I have the power at 7, and it just barely takes some of the paint and stuff off. 'Cause it basically spray paint the tile first,
Right.
and sometimes it does fair amount, sometimes it doesn't. And when
So
I
so
take and
keep
have it,
your angle. Hold on, let me grab this real quick. Keep your angle
yeah,
at 180 or 0, whichever way. So if you're doing 180 degrees, you're coming from the top down, and you'll be able to see facial features and stuff like that first, so you don't waste your time. If you have
gotcha.
a nice thin coat, I'm not sure if you're watching, right?
I am.
Okay, so if you have a nice thin coat on a white tile like this, something
Right.
like 300 millimeters per second and about 8 to 10 power, you should be good. You don't want to do that 22 degree scan angle. What does that revert to, Myers? It's got to revert to something like something slow.
So,
It's
yeah, 300 would then be your max speed because the wax is limited to that. Plus, your scanning offsets don't get applied because there aren't any for the y-axis. You're moving the big gantry back and forth, which is not meant to do. That option is really for diode lasers and other small lasers. It's really not meant for uh, bigger lasers,
For
especially your Note
CO2.
51. Yeah.
Okay.
So
All right.
if you notice a lot of burn in or whatever, it's because it's even though you put 1,000 in for light burn, the machine will then read out that it's only going to do 300.
Okay. And I noticed too is that when I do the multi-part, I can have, the fill on the first part, the other one I can do line. If I put it to like 0, so if I didn't want it to do that, I notice it still does the line. So I know a couple of webinars back that I think it was mentioned, Brian mentioned something, the fact that even if you have it lower than your 7 or whatever, it potentially still can um, produce the some type of the laser will come out. And I noticed I had that too. Is there a way? So if, and other than just removing that line, is there a way just to put a different number in there so it won't do the line if I use the multi-part?
How are you
Does that
using the
make sense?
multi-part? Yeah, I'm trying to understand how
I
you're using
have.
the multi.
Yeah. So the multi-part, basically I have a fill, and after that, then it goes in and aligns it like if I'm doing like monograms.
Okay,
So
so
it
like
will take and do this. I'm sorry.
no, so you're just doing a quick outline or something,
It does. It does an outline of that of the monogram. So when you
right?
do the fill, it's kind of blurry, but when I do the outline, it makes everything real sharp.
Okay, and make sure your scans should not be or your fills should not be blurry if your offsets are in, and if you're running at a 22 degree angle, that could also be why you're getting a
Yeah.
blurry image.
And I think the blurry
Yep.
because it's taking the paint off and I have hardly no air coming out. I think it's the dust from the paint that sits there until you brush it off with a brush. So I think.
Yeah, and any line movement, you're going to want to have try to match the power, especially that low.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
You got it.
James has got his hand up.
Hey guys, can y'all
Hey,
hear me?
James.
Hey, I'm on my phone today. I'm not on a computer. I just make sure y'all can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just had I guess a weird phenomenon last, I guess a couple of days ago. I tried to do the what we talked about in the previous meetings with the Z offset, changing heights for engraving versus cutting in the same job file. I had a weird thing happen where I set the basically the absolute 6 mm height, and then I set my engraving layer to negative point zero whatever to achieve the 2 mm raise or lower of the bed, so it's 8 mm engrave height. And then when it went to engrave, everything on the edges of the engrave were like 100% power and burning through the wood completely, but the middles were like a normal engrave. Have y'all ever heard of that? And I turned the Z
Mm.
offset off, turned the offset to 0, and engraved again just to make sure it was correct, and it worked perfectly fine with the engrave.
I hadn't seen that. Would definitely want to see some pictures, and if you could share the file.
Yeah.
One thing
The-
that did catch me when you start doing Z moves, you mentioned absolute. Definitely would recommend sticking with relative Z moves if that's what you're talking about.
I just meant like setting the start point of 6 mm so it wouldn't crash or anything during a Z move.
Okay.
But yeah,
And
I mean,
then
I
you
could
don't
share the.
have any kind of ramping on the edges, do you?
No,
That's
I
it.
basically I took my existing engraving layer that worked perfectly every time, and I just added that Z move of negative point zero to move the bed down, and it was just doing it on basically the transition points from going from right to left. It would burn basically hot, but in the middle it would be its normal burn rate.
And the only difference was activating that Z move.
Correct. So
Well,
I
that
ended
might
up
be.
I ended up turning it off, and it worked fine. I just had obviously the job file thing is I can live with it. Just I don't know if y'all ever heard of that.
And then what version of
Might be.
Lightburn are you on?
It was the 1.4. I just updated to the new one
Okay.
yesterday.
Let me see.
Can you send pictures in this chat or no?
Yeah, it'd
Um,
probably be easier if you sent in a support ticket and
Okay.
then also include your file and stuff. We could take a look there.
yeah,
Okay.
and if we have to, we can actually pull Lightburn into to try to help, especially
Yeah, I mean
if that's some type of a error on the programming side, then they're going to be the ones to solve that.
yeah, because I mean I couldn't imagine it even if it moved down the Z offset back to 6, it wouldn't burn through the wood like it would at the settings it would for engrave. So it seemed like something was
No,
going on power related.
yeah, it sounds like it's sending a different signal. I'd like to test it or send us the file. We'll test it on a couple different machines to see,
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to see
and
if I still have the file on the controller or not, because
and 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 we can try it. We can try just replicating that with the Z moves on any of our files too, and see if it does something. And then
Yeah.
if it is an anomaly of Lightburn, then we'll bring them in.
If
yeah,
I want
and the
I want
reason
to look to see what their update included. If there was any bug fixes, I want to look right now.
but the reason I think it's an anomaly because, like you said in the last meeting, is to run some tests so you don't go screw up a bunch of wood. And I did that, and I was successful like 5 times. So I was like, I think I'm comfortable doing it. In the first test I ran on a board, it did that. So I don't know if it was just an error in the send or what. I haven't tried it again. I actually had surgery, so I haven't been able to fool with much. But I could send it
Let
over,
me
Chris.
see.
yeah, we'd be
Yeah,
happy to have a
let's
look
put
at
it in
it.
the ticket.
On that relative Z move, or whether you have relative turned on or off. If you don't have relative turned on, you'll have to make sure that you have thicknesses entered in all of the layer settings and all that, or it'll act weird. That's probably not related to how that, your resultant output, but just a note on that. It can do some really weird stuff, not having it set to relative.
Okay.
Tickets are hopping today. Sorry. So what do we want to talk
Huh.
about?
I'm surprised there's not more questions about the Bolt.
That might be getting a little stale.
I guess I covered a lot of it. I guess everybody just wants one now.
I finally made an article on the double lines and then one on a safety data sheet. So that's
Hey
might be
Brian,
noteworthy. Yeah.
I watched the safety data sheet one this morning. Very nice.
Yeah, it wasn't really apples to oranges. That other stuff was thicker, but I was just looking at the material itself, PVC.
No, and that I think you hit the point well with okay, just because whatever material has a data sheet doesn't mean that the materials inside of the material aren't toxic.
Yeah,
And
they
that's
can
what
have
we
proprietary
realize.
listed on all kinds of stuff, and it can be some really nasty stuff that you might not even know about, and they keep it hidden. So what good's the sheet if it won't tell you what's really in there?
But that might be me with years of experience on, in the back of a damn little research vehicle, flipping through NIOSH manuals and everything else going, oh God, we're all going to die here. I think James has something.
Yep.
Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, I would. My bad. I didn't put my hand down. Sorry.
That's fine.
I did look at the release notes for the current build, and it looks like there is a patch coming out soon, but none of that was corrected with the 0.01. So if there is an issue, then they need to know about it. So we'll check it out. Yeah, I don't see anything.
Did you tell them about this meeting also?
Anybody got any good ideas on how to keep this thunder camera in place in a hot, humid area?
You mean does it keep falling down?
Yeah, I've had it fall down 4 times with new
Have you
tape.
with new
The
tape?
bane of my existence. I don't think it's the tape, Chris. I think it's the texture or something. I mean,
Well, the
there's a
bases
bunch
are
of them.
textured. Now they are. They've got a built-in texture.
Yeah. More surface area.
Well, it's mostly a tape coming off of the
Glass.
hood side, not off of the
Gotcha.
the 3D printed part.
Okay. A lot of times it comes off the 3D printed side.
Are you sticking it to the
Yeah.
glass or the metal?
I think I did both. Tried both.
I'd at least
Yeah, I
use
mean
some
it's
isopropyl alcohol and clean those surfaces, because if you'd been running the machine prior to installing the camera, you get a lot of oils and stuff out of the wood and the engraves. Like, it's amazing how dirty that glass can get. And of course, when China builds a machine, they coat these suckers in oil before they ship them, typically around all the mechanical components. But yeah, I would definitely use some isopropyl alcohol and try to clean that stuff, and then reapply.
what do you know what tape's on it? Just some VHB.
Yeah, so it's a 3M5952. It's one of their VHBs. There's more than one VHB or whatever, but it's the 5952 series.
Okay, I just need to get some more because I've tried a couple times.
Yeah. What about have you tried the clear Gorilla Tape?
I do have some of that I could try.
Use that as well.
What's the best position to place the camera? Should it be on the glass or should it be on the hood itself?
It's going to depend on your model. I've always put it on the
Nova
glass
51,
for
130.
Yeah, so on that one, I put it on the big piece of glass centered, but it butted up towards the metal part. It also depends on the bracketry you got, because they've changed that on the hood over the years. That's where I put it, centered, big piece of glass next to the metal that divides it from the small piece of glass.
Okay, because I think I put mine on the metal portion and it didn't look like I covered the very back of the bed all the way. So I was
And
wondering if that might have been the case.
you won't on a 51 because of the way the lid and the hinge is.
The bed
Okay.
extends beyond the hinge line on the 51 and 63, so there's no way in the world that you'll be able to see that back couple of inches. However, that doesn't really keep you from using the camera. You lose that much visible space. That doesn't mean you can't put artwork back there. You can still work back there. You'll just need to visualize everything with the other 90% of the viewing area that you have, or 95, or however much is there.
Right. And I've been able to do it. I do notice once that after I did the initial focusing, then trying to get it back to that same level sometimes is not as accurate. I use the combination of pointing it on it and if there's a way to, when you save your file, is there a way to save the Z setting? Maybe I have the Z setting
Well,
off that I can go back and
well,
load the file and it will put it where it was.
the thing about that is if you calibrate the camera using autofocus, meaning you autofocus the sample material that you're
Yep.
going to lay down to output that test pattern, and use
Yes.
autofocus in conjunction with the camera, then you'll always be at the correct height. And that's almost critical to maintain accuracy with this camera.
Okay. I
Because
probably need to
technically you
redo
could
the autofocus.
I mean, you could do what you're saying. Yeah, Chris can elaborate on that. I think that's where you were going.
Yeah, if you lower the bed down far enough, you can see the entire honeycomb. The angle that we provide probably isn't optimal because we're expecting it to be at the autofocus level. But yeah, if you lower the bed down, you can't see the back, and your procedure would be start up, do an autofocus, and then you've got to calculate that Z move to go back down again based off your material thickness and the drop height of whatever you're going with, so that your surface is always in that same spot. But you technically could do that. It's just 1% of people may need that, and the other 99.9 really don't. But it's up to you. The camera doesn't
Is
care,
it
and the
a way to
machine doesn't
save
care.
the Z setting? Is a way in your file to save the Z setting, so when you load that again, it'll bring it to that same Z setting?
Not that I'm aware of. You'd almost have to basically start it up, manually move it down, because even when
Okay.
you do an autofocus, the machine isn't remembering that. It's just a procedure you do as part of setup. But you would just now, instead of
Right.
doing your autofocus, you would move it, say 6 inches down, get the full view every time. And there's a readout on the little screen to the right that tells you X, Y, and Z position. You could utilize that.
Right.
You
I don't.
In the move panel, you can save presets of save
Yeah,
positions.
but I think that's
So
only X and Y, isn't it?
it's got
Does it
it's
have
got X,
Z?
Y, Z, and U. I think it's all of them.
Okay.
This is in Lightburn Move you're talking about, the blue panel
Mm-hmm.
in Lightburn?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
I
it
think
only
I've seen
lets you
that. I just
move
wasn't
X and
sure how that
Y
worked.
because Z
Okay,
is such a funny axis between the relative control. Because when you start up, it thinks it's at position 3000, which really doesn't make sense, right? But it's just because it doesn't home that axis. You could technically home that axis and get a 0 position with autofocus or even axis reset, but again, just not not part of the normal procedure. But you could use the readout to know that you're in the exact right spot.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I'll give it a try.
Want me to reply to that, Brian?
Probably best.
Brian?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
What I don't know if this is normal or not. Is there any way to send the, I don't know what you call it, the circle framing feature from Lightburn to the laser smoothly? My 51 will not frame smoothly from Lightburn.
If you're talking about it sounding like it's falling apart when it's doing that, the rubber band frame,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
typical. That's just because it's trying to move two directions at once.
Okay.
That's expected behavior.
So it can't
Absolutely.
do like,
You could
You're
slow
getting
down
really.
probably.
It's basically chopping up. Like if you're framing a circle, it's chopping up into straight line segments, and it's sending them from Lightburn.
okay.
Move here, move here, move here. So it's just a lot of stop motion.
Yeah, that
Okay,
type
so
of
it's not a
frame was
continuous.
never. No, that type of frame wasn't considered when they built the controller. That's a Lightburn addition.
Yeah. Now the Odin may handle differently because there's a lot less inertia. Everything's a lot lighter. But on these Novas, they're real heavy duty, and all those rapid movements, with the gantry and head, mean more. They have more of an effect than on something like the Odin or the Bolt. That'll be something to
Yeah, I mean,
check. I haven't. Yeah.
not to mention them, but I had a K40 before this Thunder, and it didn't do this, so that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And there were two. I'll clear the hands. Did Bill, James? Did you both get those?
Yeah, that was my question. Yep.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Well, feel free to fire them. Keep coming with
Keep
them.
on, yeah. I'm gonna mute myself just in case.
I have a question. Does
Okay.
the Thunder pick up back where it left off after a power loss?
If you send it to the controller, it will. If you hit the start button, it won't because it's streaming bit by bit. But if you send or shift plus send and send it over to the resident memory of the controller, it will recover on a power outage.
Okay. So the Thunder has no type of I guess any type of battery backup or anything in.
No.
Okay. Yeah, because I had the power flicker the other day and it like reset in the middle and I couldn't get it to go back to the origin. It just basically went back to the 0, 0 in the corner and never went back to the origin. And I
Yeah.
just figured it was a brief power flick and it just got lost.
And that's
So
possible. If you send it over using the start button, then that's expected. If you actually use send to send it over the whole file into the controller, I guess it could have glitched, if it was a brownout and gone haywire. But on a full stop outage, like if you just yank the cord or hit the e-stop, I believe it will try to recover most of the time. Every once in a while, you might
yeah,
get quirky. But
yeah, I wouldn't guarantee it 100%, but I would also take advantage of Lightburn's start from here feature.
Hmm.
So if you go into your preview window, you probably already know that you can scrub through the process and then pick that point and start from that point.
Okay. Yeah, I usually
Or
send
you
all my
can,
files basically to the laser send through that Raspberry Pi.
right. Yeah, the other thing you could do is, like Bill was talking about changing the scan angle, but like we said, only 0 or 180. You can flip it to do your project or your engrave from 180, and then once it meets up to the part that it didn't finish, that's when you would stop it. So basically, you engraved from the bottom up, and then you're gonna, it stopped. Then you're gonna engrave from the top down to where it meets, and then shut it down.
I'll have to try that next time if it happens.
sorry, I'll break the awkward silence. I've had my head stuck in this ticket. If anybody's got anything, just holler. Just kick it on and go with it.
I got an observation. We like Jim with the new beard color, and then Tommy looks like he got a nice clean cut. That's interesting, fellas.
I'm just not wearing a hat.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
Almost
I'm just
couldn't
not wearing a
recognize
hat.
you.
And so he did trim up his beard too.
Okay.
And I'm just being quiet today.
You're supposed to be angry.
Dude, you don't want me angry on this.
If we don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
It's been a rough week, Brian.
Okay.
I'll go get my hat and make you feel better, Chris.
There you go.
We could go through the bolt wiring diagram. That'd put everybody to sleep. Oh wow, we're gonna have to give this one an 8, Chris. It's 336. It's on the struggle bus.
You taking over?
Who?
Yeah.
You mad I'm taking so long and talking?
Are you taking that one over?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. All right, so let's talk about something.
This is better, Chris. Make you more comfortable.
Got his hat back on.
Yep. Yeah, it looks good. No more glare.
I didn't really notice until he mentioned that, but you do usually wear a hat. I guess it's as weird as if I'm not wearing a hat, because like 100% of the time I usually am.
Yep.
But I never noticed. I mean, I guess I'm just not observant.
No. I started shaving my head, halfway through my 20 years in the Army?
Yeah.
Just because it was easier.
Yeah. I wish I could do that with my grass. Just make everything asphalt.
You can if you go live in Arizona. Or they do
Loco doesn't like
rocks.
to hear that because he's got a lawn care company. He doesn't like people talking like that.
I'd love to get rid of that company.
Oh,
Well,
So she talked to y'all that we had been trying the cylinder correction with the fiber.
Yes, she did mention that, and I really haven't used it that much, so I'd be interested to see if you create a video or. I don't have faith in the optics being able to push around, so I know it's
exactly.
limited, and I'm going to push it to a limit that I know it'll work at without that.
So
We went beyond.
yeah, we tested it today. So the standard lens that comes with it, if you can keep your image 50 millimeters wide, and I'm gonna try. Bear with
It's
me.
hard to get really close to this camera, and it's fuzzy camera.
Yeah, it is. Damn. The top is 50 millimeters, and then the bottom is a little bit longer, so the outside edges didn't pick up as well. But the very bottom corner of the word did fine, but as the T went up, it didn't, and it missed a few letters. But the image looks clean. By the way, I put the 200 millimeter head in or lens in, and on these dice cups, you can't get the focal length. I maxed it out and still had half an inch to go. So
there's a lot going on doing something, circular, especially with as little depth of field as these lenses have, plus the major distortion on them. And you're basically having to reverse all that with calculations, for that circumference. So yeah, there's a lot going on there.
But I mean, if you take away the fact that some of the engraving just didn't go deep enough, everything else is to scale, and it all came out the correct size and everything. Yeah. So that was a plus. Of course, we weren't trying to do a circle or anything either.
Yeah, I was experimenting with some anodized 1911 grips, full size grips, and that's not much of a curvature, not much at all. And I had my power down really low because I was just going to etch it at first. I was going to deep engrave later after I played with it a little bit, and it wouldn't go all the way out to the edges. But I had it at a really low power, so I sped up and cranked the power up, and I could get farther out on that margin as I raised the power. So you got to kind of find that happy medium too.
That's nice to know for metal when you're doing leatherette.
Oh yeah, you'll burn the middle of it up.
No, there is no adjusting. Your setting is your setting, or you're burning through it.
We went with the most difficult thing we could and gave it a whirl.
Yeah, well, I start easy on something. Now it's to figure out the settings for removing just the powder coat. Because it did the same thing with a different logo. The outside, yeah, it's not gonna. The
Yes.
outside of the ears didn't come up or get really engraved. It got marked, but that's just enough to see it. So I think for the, what is that, the 110 millimeter lens or
Mhm.
160,
Yeah, whatever the standard lens is.
you only get about 2 inches or 50 millimeters to wrap.
Are you finally fine tuning that fiber? You enjoying it?
Yeah, yeah. When I have time to do it, we just decided today that I would try to do these because I'd been wanting to do them. We know that we can do these, in the rotary or in the CO2, but the fiber does a little bit better on the leatherette, and of course the UV does a whole lot better on the leatherette. But
I don't know. I wouldn't know.
So yeah, we're just kind of, because the same concepts apply with the fiber and the UV, so I might as well, practice a few things with what I've got. But if people are like ours, and you and I talked, our corrections and all that didn't import into the Lightburn for the Mac, so
Mm-hmm.
going through the hours of pain to get the bulge and the pinch and get those settings dialed in.
Drawing square after square after square.
So yeah, I mean, now that they're fine, the lens corrections are done. Being able to accurately put a rectangle someplace and measure distances and know, okay, my image is going to go inside of this so I can line it up. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, hopefully everything else solidifies itself next week.
Yeah, I am too.
I think so.
But
That'll be good.
I had to interview last week, so I figured I'd hear something this week. And if there's any other things like that that y'all think of that y'all don't do a lot of with the fiber, let me know.
We like doing weird testing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My UV ought to be here pretty soon, and I can't wait to start messing with that. I say pretty soon. Who knows? But supposedly it's coming. And I can't wait for that. That's going to be neat to play with. It's kind of a different animal.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to it.
And I need to learn more about these galvos. So that'll be a good experience for me. I mean, I can take them apart and put them back together, but I wouldn't want you to hand me your Kimber and say put my picture on the side of it.
But now that when we submitted that support ticket and you got all the measurements, adding the measurements now, having those is quick and easy. There's no thought, so at least hopefully they're accurate and we're not guessing.
For the distance?
Yeah, the distance from the center of the lens to the mirrors.
Okay.
And then you just add the, 108 or whatever the focal distance is for the lens.
So have you tried it without that?
No, I have not.
I would like to see how much it compensates. What is it actually doing? Is it ramping power towards the edges just so it can travel a little bit further? Because, I mean, optics are optics, and you're going to run out of steam eventually. So it can only do so much, right? So what is Lightburn compensating for how is it compensating? And I guess I can ask Viper and find out. But I find it interesting.
So what I found is I left my image the same size and then realized when I went to frame it, it was just ginormous compared to what it was. And I had to go back in there and enable cylinder correction, and it reduced the size of it. So I know it does alter something, but I will see what I can come up with on camera that shows the differences and something that's easy to see, if that works.
It'll be interesting to see for sure. I could see that really working well with a truly enabled EasyCAD 3 machine where it can actually move the Z. And then you can have the compensation where it pulls the Z down and you can actually get around those edges. You know, it'll stage itself or step itself down as you're getting around. But not many machines take advantage of the EasyCAD 3 step, and nobody wants to use EasyCAD 3, so.
No.
Not so much. Man, it is hot in here, regardless.
I'm sure Lightburn will eventually, maybe someday down the road, get that going. It'll be a while after the OEM relaxes their stuff, or more people start forking it, and start trying to figure everything out. But it's all encrypted and everything in the back end and stuff like that.
But other than that, like I said, if there's other things on the fiber to try, just let me know. That was the only thing that I could really come up with that there's not a lot of documentation on. There's one or two things here and there as vague as can be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the most documentation that we have on anything is going to be this UV for at least settings and stuff like that. I got to build articles for it still.
Now with the new Aurora 8s, they all come with cameras.
From our knowledge.
I know the fibers do, and you have one in your UV.
Yep.
So that would tell me that they all.
I mean, they did change. Like this one has an automatic door. That's no longer going to be on any of the standard machines. It will only be on the Pro machines, from my understanding.
Okay.
So it won't have the auto door, even though I think that the UV is the one that really needs the auto door most importantly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're trying to keep their costs competitive with everybody else.
Now the camera is already pre-calibrated.
It is. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to do anything besides act. Yeah, it's already calibrated. It already has. I mean, it's
that
not,
stuff's internal in Lightburn.
Sorry, it's. I had to do the 4-point grid to pick your little pizza pie shapes. That I had to do. But beyond that, I mean, it was ready to go. Lightburn found it. It's got its own name on the board.
And the camera does the same as when you use the camera for the CO2. It allows you to put your images where you want them.
Correct.
Okay.
With a lot more accuracy. Because it's a lot closer. Yeah.
Okay. Instead of like with this one, as it's framing, if I'm doing a coin, I've made the circle and I'm hitting the damn arrow keys to move it, or I'm manually adjusting it.
Yeah, we do pretty good.
Yeah, not bad. I mean,
James, you have another question? Sorry.
No, I just had a Lightburn question. I was just gonna wait till y'all had a pause.
Go ahead,
I,
go for it.
I just had I don't know if this is out there or not. Is there a way to save Lightburn layers? I don't know how to say this. Like every time you open a new job, it basically opens on the last setting you used of that layer, correct?
Right.
Correct. You can default them.
Now,
So is there a
if
way to set them?
well,
Hmm.
if you make a file and you have certain settings set on those layers and you save the file, they save with the file. If
Right.
you have a new document, if you import that Lightburn file, none of that data will come with it. You'll back to your default palette. If you open it, then all of the layer information comes in with it.
Okay.
So
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 like
Now
if you
theoretically,
open a new page, if you open a new page, it's just going to default back to whatever you used last job,
I think so.
yeah,
even if you name the layers 1/8 inch acrylic.
I think
Yes.
so.
well, if you name it, and then there's two defaults. You can set a default for your speed, and you can set a default for your power. Once you
Per
lock
layer.
those in, per layer, yes, it'll
Okay.
lock that color in. So let's say pink is what you want to use all the time for 1/8 inch acrylic, and that's your go-to. So you can set your speed, set your power, click default on both, because there are two. There's not just one.
Okay.
And then it should. I got balloons flying around. I don't know what hand gesture I did, but I did a hand gesture, and I had balloons. Chris loves that, right, Chris?
No.
There it is.
Hold on.
So,
There you go. Boom.
James, I would tell you that we had tried that at one time of, okay, blue is always engraved, red is always cut, purple is, score, light green is, you had done that at,
Yeah, but now you're messing the colors up. I
yeah.
still do it.
But
But by
doing,
memory.
building your library will also help you if something happens and you go, oh crap, that's not what I was doing before. If you have it saved in your library as acrylic 6 millimeter cut, this is the power, the speed, and all that. It'll allow you to always have that because
Okay.
we found that Lightburn has a mind of its own at times
Hmm.
and just randomly does weird stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to set up the library and layers because I usually run the lasers and I had surgery and I'm not be able to do it, so I'm trying to get my wife set up to easily be able to click on 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch material based stuff. So I just wanted to make sure that was possible.
And really the easiest thing is to do that material library, and just make sure that she understands how all of that works, so that she
Okay.
can select what she needs for what the material is.
Yep.
And the material test cards are nice too.
Yeah, I keep tons. I've got 2 drawers on my standing desk here, and one drawer has all my material test cards for my 130, and the other drawer has all the material test cards for my 80 watt. So if I ever have doubts about what's in my material library, I can always dig through my drawers and find the material that I'm using and reference there. Or say I need a certain depth engrave on a certain material, because we're going to backfill it with epoxy or whatever. He's going to have to do more sanding on it for whatever reason. Then I can go through all of that and make sure I'm getting exactly the right settings that I need, not just whatever is in Lightburn.
We make sure of it because we also have the fiber. So I'm only allowed to use like purple on the fiber, and I have to go off of my material test because if I click the wrong color and
he messes my whole world up.
So that's where we go back to the material library is probably a really good idea.
So there's still no way to designate based on machine either, right? Like you can't set these parameters for a Nova for fiber.
You
Brian, you're
can.
muted.
You'd have to. you'd have to have two different libraries though. You'd have to load the library or separate your library.
I
The
have
li-
each material. I've started now designating with the material name what, whether it's for the 80 watt or the 130 watt. If it doesn't say anything, it's for the 130 watt. If it says something, then it's usually just says the 80 watt. And then the fiber stuff is all separate on a different computer with its own library setup.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the different device profiles will follow a library though. Like you could pull up your Nova 3580 and have your Nova 35 library loaded for it, and then have on your fiber you load a different library, and as you switch devices, those libraries will typically change with it.
I'm going to say
But
too.
not the layer settings per se. Not like we were just talking about.
I guess you would have to save that library because mine have never transferred over like that. And I know that's something that Jason with Lightburn was working on.
Yeah, I think it does it for me because I keep all mine in one folder in Dropbox and use the desktop app to sync them to a physical folder, But it seems to work for me.
All of our stuff is saved on the iCloud too, so it's
Yeah.
And Chris would say that's your problem.
Yes, he would.
That is
Apple.
not.
Well, it's not just iCloud, it's OneDrive, all that cloud stuff.
Yeah. The key is having a physical copy synced on the computer.
Yeah. What, you just recently backed up everything that was on the iCloud to the however many terabyte hard drive the other day. We should do that more often, but
And Brian, you would be proud. I know Chris knows. I put on my big boy pants and I did my own IP addresses the other day when I had to change routers and everything else. So
there you go. Awesome. And it's all working.
yeah, everything except the actual paper printer doesn't work now, and I don't know. I gave up trying. I don't know. It was free from the neighbor. It worked really good though.
Put in the ticket.
Brian,
I used to work for a copier place.
hey,
Thanks.
if I thought it would, y'all would get a kick out of that one.
Yeah. It's a Canon.
I have to find out if there is a setting that you have to click so that the library follows the machine, but I just it doesn't.
I don't-
I mean, the
follow
device
mine.
profile has a library link in it, so I would think it would. If you open up the device exported device file as a text file, you can read where you're supposed to be saving that on your computer.
Yeah.
Or looking for that
Saving
resource.
Saving it, yes, but saving it per device.
Yeah, each
Well,
device profile should have one.
Save,
Yeah,
move, rotate, switches, scale.
It'll load
output
whichever
setting.
one you've loaded the last time when you saved the device profile, I think. So.
Yeah, I can't. I'm going to try a couple different ways here.
So I have learned something else. If y'all are interested, the fact that you should really only own one brand of rotary, because when you do rotary and you start trying to remember which steps per rotation and all that other stuff, and it gets cross-wired because you clicked the wrong file.
I got sticky notes and I got files saved, but stuff still goes haywire sometimes.
So I do highly recommend anybody that ever hears this one, stick with one damn brand. Don't have both.
Well, cool. Hey, it's 4:00. I'm stopping the recording.